Hey everyone, and welcome to Christmas edition of the Serious Rare Club. I'm here with Johnny and Josie and Bethany. So
Bethany.
I was going to say Serious Writer. That's what it says. Merry Christmas! We're excited that you're here. And today I had an idea. It's kind of on the whim, but we wanted to talk about the career of Josie. And so, because it's been exciting to follow and see your journey from being an unpublished writer to a published author, and now it's been fun to be part of that journey and to see it and to see your posts online. And just I think the thing I think is most fun to see, and Bethany and I have talked about this in the past, is your excitement for what's happening. Like you genuinely are very happy, at least from my
My
perspective, and
mind is
seeing your
blown.
posts.
It's
Yeah, like
happening.
you're so thrilled to be a published author, and it's been going well. So if we could ask you some questions about it, and just um, maybe if we could ask you to start with just telling us your story,
Sure.
and story being like what all you've gotten published so far. When did you start writing? Kind of what's the journey been begin from like the beginning till how long did it take to get published, and some of the things that might give hope to people who are watching this and thinking somebody's looking for a phone right next to me. So, but give hope to our writers who call Serious our home that like you just got to keep going. You just got to keep learning, got to keep trying, got to keep doing these things. So, can you tell us a little about your story, and then we'll pepper you with some questions.
Sure. So, I never intended to be a writer. I always enjoyed writing when I was little, but I was going to be a missionary and
Oh,
I was going to go overseas. I did so much work, years and years and years of work and prep, schooling, training, all the things. And I was ready to go overseas in 2008 as a missionary. And then I got sick. I've kind of been sickly my whole life, and it just kind of hit the fan in 2008. And through my journey preparing to be a missionary, I had to keep my supporters informed. And so I started a newsletter, which turned into a blog. And that morphed when I got sick. And at first, I just thought I was kind of putting my life on hold and I'd get better and be able to just pick right up where I left off. Um, a couple years later, I realized that chronic illness meant, oh, unless the Lord heals me, I'm really not getting better. And so that blog turned into me processing my emotions of what was happening. And I do so much better writing than I do talking and communicating. And so that just turned into kind of therapy for me, but it also kept people informed. Um, I joined Aaron Austin with Broken but Priceless Ministries in 2009, I think. And we had a blog through that where we just encouraged people with chronic illnesses. And in 2015, she invited me to Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. And that was my first writers conference. And that's when I first met Kyle and saw him
that's
win
right.
like
That's where we met.
every award possible.
Oh yeah, that year. Oh, that year. Okay.
Rocking the stage. And I thought, wow, what's that like? But that's where I just really felt the calling that maybe God wants me to write instead. That's the first time where I took it seriously, where I thought maybe I have a story in me. And people kept telling me I should write my story of chronic illness and what the Lord did through that in a book. And so that's honestly what I thought would be published first. I thought that I would have a nonfiction book out and it was going to be my story. And through Serious Writer, I have learned that, well, unless you have something else to go with that, that's probably not going to fly very well because people who don't know me don't care, honestly. And so some of that's still in the works as far as, what else can I do with that and how can I bring my story into something else? But I see that as being kind of down the road. But I have struggled with insomnia off and on. And it was one of those nights when God dropped this idea in my head for a book about this donkey with the broken hee-haw. And I wrote the first half of the book that night on my cell phone notes app. And the
That's like
next
the
night,
best place, right?
right? I love it. And so the next night, again, I couldn't sleep. I wrote a little more. And it happened to be during the Serious Writer 12 Days of Christmas where we were sharing, or maybe it was some sort of a serious writer challenge. I can't remember, it was 12 days of Christmas or something else, but we were all supposed to be sharing what our work in progress was. And so I shared about this little donkey book that I had an idea about. And for months after that, people kept asking me, oh, I keep thinking about this book. How's it doing? And another thing that you guys had told me is that if you give people a bunch of ideas and then ask them later on down the road, oh, you remember I told you all those ideas? Did any of them stick? Have you thought about any of them? And that's the book people kept asking me about. And so I finished
That's
it.
awesome.
I wrote the ending, and I hired Michelle Medlock Adams to take a look at it and edit it for me and see what she thought. And she goes, Josie, this is going to be your breakout book. And sure enough, there it is, beautiful little Howie's Broken Hee-Haw.
There it
And
is.
it came about in the weirdest way. It was all through connections. And I did Victoria Deerstock's Building Platform 101 course. That took me a whole year to do that class. And then I still to this day do not know who, but someone offered a scholarship for her to mentor me. And so I coached with her for almost a year. And then she started her own publishing company. And she, of course, knew about this book and she wanted it. And that's how I got published. I don't have the social media numbers. I don't have that anything that you're supposed to have. But I have people who are a small following, but a very engaged following. And so they shared the heck out of that book when
We
it
call that a micro influencer. You have a small group of people,
small but
but
mighty.
they're very committed to you because you're very committed to them. And that's one thing we've always loved about you. You are so supportive of people. And that's been in return for you from your followers. And so I think it's been awesome to watch. And no, sorry to interrupt your story, but
No,
but
that's
we're
exactly.
excited for you.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I really learned, that through all of this training, I was supporting and encouraging other authors, because I learned very quickly in the beginning that we're here to help each other out, right? We're not in competition. And so every good thing that's happened has been because of somebody else. It's been because of a connection I had, somebody recommended something, somebody already knew me because I had supported them or we had connected at a conference. I've been on a ton of launch teams. I love to share other people's stuff. And when my book came out, people came out in droves to support me when it was my turn. And it was just such a blessing. And it was so exciting to see. And so I have Howie's book published, and I also have 10 devotions in a book put out by Endgame Press with other Endgame Press authors called Ordinary People, Extraordinary God. That's the latest book that came out. And I have a Howie and Friends 90-day devotional that should be coming out next year sometime. If all goes well in the publishing world, I'm waiting to hear back on some things, but it's written, it's turned into my publisher, and I am hoping we have some more Howie and Friends coming soon. So that's kind of my story. My agent, Andy, who's with Kyle's agency, he has a ton of my work that he's shopping out, and I'm waiting to hear back about any news from that in the days to come. So I feel like I'm kind of in this lovely little break where I have things that I can do, but I don't have anything that I have to do at the moment. And so that's kind of a fun place to be.
So, Josie, you did a lot of marketing for the Howie book, and some of the stuff was really creative. So, I know we're kind of putting you on the spot, asking you a few questions about this, but
For me to remember.
you share just one of them. I know one of them was the donkey sanctuary. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it goes beyond Easter. You have this beautiful Easter book for kids, but your marketing went beyond Easter. You kind of leaned into the donkey side with Howie to kind of build appreciation for people who love these animals. Can you share just a little bit about that? Because it was so cool watching you reach out to these people and get these different connections that really sort of brought this community of donkey lovers together. I don't know, is that even the
There really is a donkey lovers community. There's Facebook groups, there's Instagram pages, there's so much donkey love. And so yeah, I ended up adopting a donkey through the donkey sanctuary. They're based, well, they're overseas. They're the one where my donkey was located was in southern England, but they have sanctuaries in other parts of Europe as well. And so Yeah, I got to adopt this donkey. Her name was Hannah. She unfortunately passed away because she was an old donkey. And so that was very sad. But they have other adoption donkeys. And so I encourage my audience that, hey, you can adopt a donkey too. And so I could give some updates with that. And then just joining the different Facebook groups, social media posts. I love animals, which is why I'm really excited about this next book, because I got to research a ton of animals because it's Howie and Friends. And so it's all these other animals that he meets. And so I followed a bunch of groups who are like homesteading groups and people who have different animals, because everybody loves to share their animals. And so I was able to connect with a bunch of those accounts. I did like mini donkey devotions. I did a series of that I turned into a PDF for a lead magnet for a while. And then I featured other donkeys. And so if I connected with somebody who had a donkey, I shared about their donkey on my Facebook page, on my Instagram. And then, of course, they would share that with their audience because their donkey got shared. And so it's all about what I've learned from you guys in Blue Ridge and other places is if we can move forward by helping other people move forward, it's a win for everybody. And so as I share, if I can share somebody else's story too, then we both win, and it's very exciting. So that was a few of the donkey themed things that I did.
There's nothing like donkey themed things at Christmas time. My favorite song is Dominic the Donkey.
Found donkey Christmas card here, and it made me
That's
so
awesome.
happy.
I'm waiting for the day you announce that you've adopted a donkey. So
Seriously, I would love that so much. Even better, actually, my neighbors have a donkey, so I get to visit there sometimes.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's not right next door. They have land, you know, a couple miles away, but they let me visit their donkey to announce when Howie's book went into a second printing within like a month or two, I think. I found it, the book came out February of 2022. And when I was at Blue Ridge that June, right before I went, I found out it had gone into a second printing, but I had to stay quiet about that until the books actually came in. So a couple months later, when all the books were here, I could do a big announcement, and I borrowed their donkey to help me make that announcement. And so that was really fun.
That's awesome. Was that donkey the inspiration?
No, no,
Okay.
it was honestly like my favorite animals have always been pigs. So I don't even know where the donkey idea came from, but
That's awesome.
my parents did have a donkey when I was a kid. They had, well, I think they got rid of the donkey right before I was born, and then they had goats when I was little, and I was too much of an unpredictable handful for them. They had to get rid of them when I came along. But so it's kind of in the family history. We love animals, and
That's great. Well, a pig book on the same topic would have been a little bit harder to sell, I think.
yes, it would.
So I'm glad you chose a donkey. Well, that's great. What has been, if I can ask, sorry, I had to step away for a hospital call. What has been your biggest challenge that was unexpected? I know we try to prepare you for the challenges to come. What's been your biggest unexpected challenge in this whole journey?
One of the unexpected challenges for me has just been all of the unknowns, all of the waiting. There's all these things that happen, and they're happening behind the scenes, and I know they're happening, but I don't know what they are. And so that's hard for me because I don't want to be that person who's, you know, annoying. And the more I annoy the people who I know are working, the less time they have to do the work for me, right? And so it's been this fine balance, but God has also taught me in that. It's the same thing with him. Like he's taught me such a spiritual lesson, because when I am waiting for other things in my life, when I'm waiting for things spiritually, and I think nothing's happening, well, I know things are happening. I just can't see them. And I know God is working, even when I can't see what he's up to. Like it's been encouraging for me too, to lean into the wait, to appreciate the wait, because when the wait is over, I'm going to be very busy.
Right.
So that's been hard. And also just the plethora of finding ways to get your book into people's hands, and visiting locations. And, you know, I finally got in to do a school visit, but it was almost a year after Howie's book came out, you know, so And because it's a faith-based book, that's, there's a school right next to my house. Well, I couldn't go in there with it, and so just some of those challenges of finding the right outlets to be able to share your book has been more challenging than I thought it would be.
Right. And I think, the waiting thing is something we try to prepare people for, but it's a lot more waiting than you even prepare for.
Like I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was this bad.
It's like, it's really that bad.
Yeah,
It's
really
worse.
is.
Right? Yeah. No, that's good. What's been your greatest, joy in the whole process? Like, what's been the one thing that you're just like, I'm just so glad that this happened because of this?
Hearing back from people, like, oh my goodness, this is gonna make me cry. But hearing back from people that they were blessed and encouraged by the book, hearing from adults who made them bawl their eyes out because it touched a place in their heart where their spirits needed that. They needed that encouragement that, you know what? I am okay the way I am. God made me on purpose for a purpose. And this thing that I don't like about myself, God can use that. And so to hear that coming from adults, but then also from kids who I got a picture from someone that a family member knows, and they had a copy of the book and they sent me a picture and it was torn to shreds. There were pages missing. They didn't, but they're like, it's okay because we haven't memorized. They have 2 little twin boys and they would read the book multiple times a day.
Awesome.
And this was like a year into it and we gifted them a replacement copy. But, just to know that that people like it, that it's touching their lives, that maybe they know God more because of that, that maybe some child is going to not derail down the road because they remember that God loves them this much. Like, that's just an incredible gift. And when I have people I don't even know send me a message and say, I was so blessed by this, I was so encouraged. And it's like, I didn't do that. God did that. And
That's awesome.
that is such a blessing.
That's awesome. And what's next? So what's next?
So next is a Howie and Friends devotional, 90-day devotional. And I got to research a whole bunch of different animals and it was so much fun. But it was also the very hardest thing I've ever done. This is great. God has me writing for kids, but I don't have kids in my life. I am from a very, very small town, and my brother and I were the kids in town, and it was a bunch of older people who were like our grandparents, and I never babysat. I have one brother, he doesn't have kids. Like, I don't have kids in my life. And because of my health, like, I tried volunteering in the nursery and in, a program through church with working with kids. And because of my health, like, my doctor almost killed me and made me stop because I was getting sick all the time. And so the fact that God has me writing for kids is hilarious and also very challenging because I don't know kids super well. And so I'm writing to myself as a child as I write. I'm writing to the things that I see my friends post about their kids. And so to write a 90-day devotional for kids is very different than writing for adults, getting the language right, the topics appropriate. So yeah, that's what is next. And I'm really excited to see what God does with that because, again, it was all him. I hit the end. I typed the end on that book and burst into tears because it was just such a load off that it's done. But I know because it was so hard, God's going to use it in amazing ways. And so I have a lot of other things my agent is shopping out. And so whatever comes back next that's great. What's next. It'll be a surprise for me too.
So in your process, you started pre 2015. That was your first conference. When was the date of when did you get an agent?
I didn't get an agent until Blue Ridge 2021.
Okay. And when did your book release?
February of 2022. Okay. And so I did not have an agent for my first book. That came later. Okay. I also was surprised by that because I always heard, once you have a contract, it's really easy to get an agent. And it was not. And so that was challenging. And for me, because I trusted Victoria so much, I knew her ahead of time, I was okay signing that contract. And I did learn that you can hire an agent just to read your contract for you. And so I did that, and it only cost me $25. So I thought it was a great deal.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did for my first book. And but now moving forward and moving into other publishers that I don't know, I really
Yeah.
need an agent, and now I have one. So God provided that too.
So 7 years from the when you started to first release, that is a great thing, but it's a long time, right? And there's other people who are going to watch this like, well, it's been 3 years, it's been forever. Like I should be published by now. But 7 years is not a bad time. Like, I mean, you're published you're on to book 2, and really it's been awesome to watch and witness your journey. And I think that's what people have to realize is our journeys are all individually different. But the rewarding part of it, I mean, I know I talked to Johnny. I know Johnny would love when people read her books. So I know my wife read Johnny's books and Johnny was all excited about it. So like, so I know that's like that's the great joy is when someone reads your books. So I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And to me, that's some of the most fun in the whole thing is like, yeah, there's money and there's other things, but like in the journey, when people see what you wrote and they enjoy it and they think about it and they tell others about it, I think that's the greatest thing. Like for me, I know like we've got a little bookstore. And so when my books sell out, they always come up and tell me, we need more of your books. And I'm like, it does feel nice. Yeah. So it always feels nice. Like, oh, we're sold out again. All right, let's go. Let's sell some more. So yeah, I think it's great. But well, thanks for taking that time with us. I know it's kind of a surprise, but we are fans of you because we've been part of your journey really the whole time. So
yeah, from the beginning,
we've met you and gotten to know you and watching the journey, and we get that experience here, right, to be part of a lot of people's journeys, and we are just as excited for you as we are for ourselves. Sometimes I think it's like we consider you guys family in our serious writer community. So like when somebody gets published from serious writer, they let us know. Like Bethany and I talked to each other, like we're so excited. Like, because it's like those are our like book grandchildren. So they're your book babies, but they're our book grandchildren. So, and I get excited every time Johnny publishes, and like just because I love Johnny. So like she publishes a lot now, so I get excited a lot for her. But
so I have a question though. Can I ask?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm really curious about the animals that you chose for the devotional with the homesteading because that just is fascinating to me. So what were a couple of animals that you researched that were really fun?
I had to figure out how to narrow it down, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up using animals that are mentioned in the Bible. And so and that was really fun. I got to do a search of all the animals that I could find in the Bible. And for me, one of the coolest ones, I'll tell you this one, was the eagle, because eagles do not exist in the Middle East. And they do not exist where the Bible was written. And so there's 100% chance that it is not an eagle that we read about in the Bible where we read about an eagle. It was most likely a griffin vulture. And so I thought that was really cool, but the idea is the same because in that culture, the griffin vulture was viewed as we view an eagle today as the most majestic, the most like amazing bird. And so that was really cool. That was probably like the one fact that has really stuck in my head. The rest is all kind of a blur, but I'm like, that was really cool. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that either. That's fascinating. Wow.
So I did the horses and the bugs, the locusts, and also anything that's mentioned in the Bible. We have how he's friends with a horse. He's friends with a sheep named Abby, which I also have a picture book written about a sheep named Abby. So that's the sheep that I put in this book, just to make that connection if maybe someday that happens down the road. So that was
that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fun. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's super good. Well, for those of you who are joining with us, I put in the chat, but please feel free to come on camera. This is very casual today. And it was really exciting hearing about Josie's journey. And what we wanted to do today too is whether you're like Josie, your book's already being published and you've got other projects that you've got going out there, or if you're querying agents or publishers, or you've got these book ideas. We've got lots of experience on this Zoom and resources for you at our fingertips. So kind of like as we're going through, if you have a topic, or if you're like, okay, well, this is a book I want to write a book about this topic, but I'm not really sure what's out there. I can jump over into my publisher's marketplace and start doing some research to see what publishing houses might be good, or what books have just recently come out. And I won't film myself doing that, just to protect whatever I signed probably when I signed up for publisher's marketplace. But I can find some of that. I have an older version of the Christian Writers Market Guide, and I've got the new one on my Kindle. Kyle's got a lot of resources as well. So we want to make sure, like, if you're trying to find like an agent or an editor or a publisher to pitch to, we can help you with that. Also, I just sent emails on Patreon. And if you're not over on Patreon yet and you're still in our old system, I just sent an email with templates, very basic templates that you can download, and then to kind of create a tracking sheet. And then I've got a couple Google Drive templates that I use that I kind of took all my information out to share too. So we just want to make sure this is very practical for you. And like, how can we help you find either publications to submit to in 2024 or podcasts or things like that? Kyle, Mom, Josie, anyone?
Yeah, I'm looking at your spreadsheets now.
Okay, they're very
okay.
basic.
Yeah, look
Very
great.
basic.
I mean, tracking is important because it gets confusing once you start getting into the dozens of when, where, who, what, and who's responded. And like Josie was talking about, like, the wait is real. So, I mean, every day I'm getting texts from authors who are stuck in a waiting process with a publisher or pub board, and they don't like it. So, and it's worse at Christmas. So I literally just texted an author back while we're on this, because the author's like, I'm tired of waiting. And we've been waiting. I mean, we are in a 12-book contract here.
Oh,
and we've already been negotiating the contract. But like, the publisher's not interested in moving this thing any faster because it's holidays. The contract's not going anywhere. But to my author, there's big decisions that need to be made. And my author wants to make the decisions. And like, the delay of getting the contracts finalized by the publisher, the wait's not on our end. It's hard. So every day I'm like, I'll reach out again. So, but it's Christmas week and people are off. You know, I got another book at Pub Board, and the author's been going nuts for 2 months. Like, where's my answer? And they're like, it was supposed to go to Pub Board in November. Then they pushed it to December, but of course nobody was available in December because of vacations. Now it's going to be January. And that's just the hard part. That's the reality of this industry. Is they might have good intentions, but they don't often have the ability to carry through on the intentions at some of these publishing houses, because there's big teams of people making decisions, and everybody's got to usually be at the table. And so things get pushed. And so,
and yet on the flip side, we have to meet our deadlines.
Yeah, you got to meet your deadline though. Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't get to be the reason for the wait as the author. Like, it's got to be here now. Yeah. So here's the funny thing, that publisher told my author, oh, by the way, we need another 8,000 words for each book in a new 4-book series. And we need it by such and such date, which is coming like in 2 weeks. We don't even have a finished contract. And mother's like, I'm not writing a single word until the contract's done. And I'm like, here's the problem. They're going to want that book on that date. They're not going to change it, because to meet the publishing time that we want for the book, we got to have it. So, and so that's when my author's like, I'm not writing for this publisher again. And so sometimes you have to write ahead when you have an established relationship for a publisher. I always caution people, don't write ahead. Don't write on spec without a contract when you don't have a relationship with the publisher. You haven't already worked for them. And you can still get burnt if you have worked for them, but it's hard because that's often the case. The editor wants the writing when they want it, but they haven't finished the contract. And there's some reality to what Josie was saying about the waiting process. It's real. And I think that's an encouragement that if you wait, good things can happen. You know, you can have a book that turns into 2 books and hopefully more for her in her career. So, Bethany, I wanted to say, like, one of the things I think people are struggling with from what I'm hearing is, I think these spreadsheets are great. I think they're kind of self-explanatory for people. So go check your emails. I'll say that. Go check your emails. Merry Christmas from Bethany. You got spreadsheets. The big thing is the comparative works. The comparative works. We talked a little bit about endorsements on the last call. Comparative works are not usually helpful. So, and maybe we can give people some resources on this. for Christmas, like bonus blessing of let's show them where to go to find comparative works, because as we both know, certain publishers discount and discredit a lot of other publishers. And that's one of the problems with comparatives is if you put a comparative on your spreadsheet and no one knows what it is, it's actually a negative for you. It's not a positive. So you need healthy comparative works for your books. And I don't know, Johnny, you can weigh in with this too. I don't know that Johnny has to do too many comparatives right now, because like,
Well, now I do actually.
do you have to do it?
Well, I haven't written a proposal in quite a while, to be honest. But yeah, the very first manuscript that I ever completely finished, and which actually got me my agent, has never been published. But it's finished, and I had it professionally edited a few years ago. And so I've been really busy with other projects, but now that's kind of slowed down a bit. So my agent and I are getting ready to shop it. So, but I need a full proposal for it. And so I have to do comparative works, and it's hard, but I like what Josie was talking about, the connections that you make different places, like it through Serious Writer or through going to conferences, that those are so important, because I have a friend who is very deep into historical fiction, and she knows all the most recent historical fiction that's out there. She does a newsletter about time slip travel. She's got a Facebook group. Again, it's basically that time slip, those parallel timelines kinds of books, but of course, most of those have a historical timeline included. And I gave her a call, and man, she gave me a bunch of books to look at for comps. And she's very familiar with this manuscript. She's read it and has brainstormed with me about it. So, it's just getting those connections, and I'm happy to do that. So I've got my list. I haven't started it yet because I don't, proposal is a hard thing to do, and I just keep putting off doing it. But it is something I have to do probably right after Christmas. I'm going to get started on it. So yeah, it's really hard. But if you can find, again, somebody that's, and I should be too, right? I should be very invested into that genre, but it's historical. And lately I've been writing a lot of contemporary. So I've kind of gotten away from that. So being able to call on someone, and now I have some books that I want to read and kind of check out too. But she really was very good at helping me with that. So yeah, you've got to know the books in your genre anyway. So
yeah, I was going to push back on you, say you're supposed to be reading and writing in that genre. But
yeah,
you're a very well-established author, bestseller, so you get you get a pass.
get a little bit of a pass.
But for everyone else, they need to be reading, and they need to know those.
Yes, you do need to read in your genre, and I'm really excited about the books that I'm
for comparatives. You need to be reading, and this is a big one that Bethany has really been pushing with her clients, because Bethany's represents a lot of clients who are writing general market fiction. And you need to be reading the top sellers that are charting, not the things you find that are 99 cents on Amazon. Those are not comparatives. They won't ever be considered comparatives for publishers. Free books are not considered comparatives. They need to be books that are being published by the publishers who are some of the biggest publishers in the categories. If you are a general market author, you need to be reading general market trade books, which means they're going to be on the bookshelves in the bookstore. Those are the books you need to be reading and finding comparatives amongst those, because those are the books that the industry accepts as reputable. And you cannot use, and we have a lot of people who write general market and a lot of people write in the religious market. Religious market comparatives do not count for anything in the traditional general market. They are, it's the same as if it was a self-published book for them. They don't put weight behind those houses unless they're an imprint of HarperCollins, Penguin, Hachette, and I'm missing somebody.
Macmillan.
Penguin Random House is one. The big ones.
The big ones.
I just said the big ones. Simon & Schuster, that's it. They need to be an imprint of those big companies or some of the biggest independent houses, but most of the biggest independent houses have been bought by Penguin in the last 3 years since COVID. So it's got to be an imprint of those big houses, and those are the comparatives you need to be using for general market, and that's it. You can't use anything outside of those. in the religious market, your comparatives need to be, you can utilize comparatives from the general market for that market. But maybe one, maybe two, but the majority of them need to come from the biggest houses in that market, which would be, if you're writing fiction, it's gonna be Bethany House, Revell, the Thomas Nelson's imprints, Penguin's imprints, the big ones, but also Tyndale. Those are some of the Baker books. Those are some of the places that you need to be, Kriegel, looking for the comps, and there's not a lot outside of that. So there's just not a lot of comps in that market where you're going to have to use some general market houses. But small independent houses are not good comps. They need to be, for what Bethany and I would say, they would need to be publishers marketplace deal makers. So
Yeah.
houses that publishers marketplace puts as deal makers, and they don't always put everybody. They have, publishers marketplace has its own jaded opinions about the market, but whoever they put as deal makers, and we can explain it, you can explain a deal maker if you want, Bethany, to everybody.
I mean, on Publishers Marketplace, there's agents can go in and submit the book title, the author, the pitch or the premise of the book, and then usually they'll say what kind of deal it was. There's categories with a range of dollars. So I think the nice deal is like 0 to 100,000 or something. I'm not really sure, but so if you make a little bit of money on there, and then it talks about the rights and where it all went to. So as an author, you probably don't care about a lot of that information, but there's a couple things that are good. It's great for comps to see what's trending, what will be trending. So I see a lot of complaints sometimes for authors when they'll get pushback from a publisher or an agent saying, well, we're kind of out of that trend right now. But then they start to see all these books pop up being published now. That's because that trend of being acquired was 2 years ago or last year. And so Publishers Marketplace, because those deals are sort of happening in real time after they get approved, those are the books that are going to be coming out in 25, 26, 27. So it's nice to be able to look at Publishers Marketplace and look at the deals to see what are people acquiring right now. I know as an agent, that's what Kyle and I do. We're always constantly looking at that and saying, okay, publishers are pitching, or they're acquiring these books right now. This is what I'm looking for too, because I want to be in on this trend. Those books aren't going to be published for a couple of years though.
Right.
And then I think too, another way to look at comps, and I've got like 4 slides, Kyle, that explain how to find comps that I can share. One thing I'm doing as an agent who's always kind of looking for comps is I pay attention to the books that other agents are promoting for their clients, which is not something that happens a lot. But if an agent, really kind of like a bigger agent, bigger than me, who's acquiring in the same space, sometimes they'll announce a Publishers Marketplace deal, or they'll say, my client, this book has just come out, and they'll talk about why. I usually go get that book because I want to know I want to think about it from their perspective of what was the content of this book that made them want to say yes to it. Even though you're not really seeing that original, and it pushes you to read wide, which is one of the goals that I had this year. Mom and I were talking about that. Like, as I'm reading wider in these genres that I really wasn't reading so much before, it's interesting now going back to other books that I would say are, the craft is not as well done, maybe, that I wouldn't use as comps because there's such a big difference in the style of the books, and that changes every few years. I mean, Kyle talks about, like, I'll pitch this to you for a second and then I can share slides, but it's important to look for books within the last 3 to 5 years. That's directly from the Simon & Schuster financial director. That's what they look for.
Right.
Do you want to share about why that's important, Kyle?
I mean, they want to know that there's a market for it now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does it matter if there's a market for it 10 years ago, 20 years ago? It needs to be a market for it now. And they need to know where your book's going to sit on the shelf and who the competitors are. And those books that are 3 to 5 years old potentially are still your competitors. And so there needs to be enough room in the market that your book can come into the market and be sellable because people buy that kind of content. But also they need to also find out if there's too much content and that there's not a space to make money. So the comps are how they evaluate the market. And the more work that you do, the easier you make it for the editor who's going to have to produce all that information anyways. And we get a lot of editors tell us how much they like comps. And early on as an agent, I didn't really get it. And it's like, it's comps are comps. Because I'm coming at it from an author's perspective. But like for the editors, it's work that they have to do. And as we've gotten smaller and smaller staffs at these publishing houses. I mean, I have a publisher, Worthy, that I used to work with that used to have 4 people. Now they have 1 person doing everything. The more that we can give them, the more likely we're going to be able to be successful. And because other people are not going to do the work, and it's just going to make it so much more effort for that editor to publish those clients or those authors, whereas we can come in with everything they need right out of the gate. So the more you do, the better. I put in the link for everyone on the Publishers Marketplace. You can sign up for a free account on Publishers Marketplace. It's limited what you get, but there's also, they have a blog and they have a thing called Free Publishers Lunch. There's also a paid version. I don't think you need the paid version. The free version doesn't do as much, but they have a blog where they put out each, let me see, I can tell you how often it comes out.
While you're
This
looking
one
up
was December 12th and December 5th. So they do a weekly blog of all the books that are coming out, being published like that week. And it tells you what's happening in the industry. You can see, but these are the books that are considered comparatives in the general market. If you're comparing books that are not hitting up on these lists, they're not going to be accepted. And that's one of the things that I think is the hardest for people to understand. Not all books that are published are accepted by the industry as trade, which means bookshelf ready, competition to their titles. And so you have to really go into that. And depending on the weeks of the year, you're going to see some weeks just have 30, 40 titles coming out. Some weeks have 5. So, and you can see the seasons where publishers are releasing books. And typically when publishers are releasing a lot of books, it's a season to shop books because they're looking to buy more books to release a year later in that season or 2 years later in that same season. When publishers are not releasing a bunch of books, it's not really a time to shop your books is what I've learned, because they're doing other things. That's why they're not releasing books right now. Or it's a slow season for the market and they're not really, for the most part, acquiring much because they're not going to, they're usually working a year or 2 or 3 out from the season that they're in.
I'm gonna pop in. I'm gonna share one. I'll share one pitch because I think it's important when you're doing your comps or even when you're pitching your own book. What I've been learning from the Publishers Marketplace deals is how to pitch a book very succinctly for that genre because they're so well done. I mean, those pitches are 1 sentence of what that book is in that deal announcement. So Kyle, you got a topic or something? I'll just do a quick search for a deal about something. I just need, what should we search for?
Well, we have a lot of children's writers, so let's do picture book.
What's a keyword? Give me a keyword.
Cuddle.
Cuddle? Okay.
What did your mom call your basement? Is snuggle? Snuggle.
Snuggery?
Snugger.
The snuggery.
I don't know if snuggery is actual word, so let's do
It's
snuggle.
not. I coined that word.
Snuggle?
Yeah, snuggle.
Hold on, I gotta filter out the romance category. Give me a minute.
Please. Please.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see which one of these is the right screen here. All right, share. All right, here we go. Okay, so you should see, tell me that we're looking at the correct screen here.
Yep.
Okay, so all I did was search in picture book fiction for children. I searched the word snuggle, and here are, so actually there's nothing in 23 that had that word. And
obviously a snuggle is not a big topic right now.
Sleepy snuggles, animal snuggles. If you're in the chat with us and you want me to do a keyword search, I will do that for you real quick. Not a problem. Is there another word? Let's want to find a more recent deal.
Try cuddle. I would think you'd get cuddle.
Okay.
I
can't see the chat for some reason. So if somebody puts a keyword in, let me know.
Yeah, there's an August one.
Oh, August.
A cuddle book is a type of children's book that's quite popular.
Sleepy, happy cuddles. Okay, Josie, you said that you have a book about sheep. Is that right? Okay, I'm gonna search sheep. Let's see. All right, October. Here's a recent one. No Elephants in Bethlehem, in which a young girl wants to be an elephant in the Christmas play, but her know-it-all sister says she'll ruin everything. And The Runaway Sheep, in which a young sheep must learn to trust his shepherd. So nice deal, 2-book deal. And then here, Paraclete, is it Paraclete, Kyle? I'm not sure. Paraclete.
I think it's Paraclete. I think it's a Catholic publisher.
So there's Christmas books coming out. That might be a good comp or something to pay attention to. And I know the Our World series, the Rainbow Sheep, Moohoo, Don't Worry, Wuddles. Anyway, so yeah, so I like to go, this is what I do as part of my process when I'm researching for my clients. I go through and look up keywords or or things. I'm trying to see which editors are actually acquiring. And that's the other thing that, you know, one of the interesting things about being an agent, not being on the author side anymore, is the dance that you have to do with these publishing house editors, because sometimes there's editors that have been acquiring, and so you'll send a query for your client, but then you don't hear anything back. And then you find out later, like, they're not there anymore. They're on maternity leave. They're not acquiring picture books. That's happened to me twice.
Yeah.
I know
I've had a lot of maternity leaves over the last 7 years.
A lot. And then, or, you know,
lot.
I'm not taking that anymore. And it's like, well, I found that information somewhere that's not been updated. So that puts you back however many weeks. And then sometimes you're waiting for a response back from an editor before you send that next client's project. So it doesn't feel like you're sending this little shotgun method to them. It's a dance with the editors. And so what I like about Publishers Marketplace too is that I can see which editors are actually acquiring right now. Like, okay, they just had a deal come out. They had a deal come out. They had a deal come out. So it's helpful.
Or the worst one, if you're not following industry news as an author, or you don't work with the agent who is, like when a publisher like Worthy fires 3 out of 4 editors, you don't get an email saying, "Hey, by the way, we're no longer reviewing this." They just disappear in the night. So, and your email is dead, and eventually they will turn off, you know, that person's email. But for a while, it'll just go to nothing until they turn it off. And it could be 6 months before they turn off those emails sometimes. And you'll get it. And you don't always get an auto response that I no longer work here, because usually when they leave the job, it doesn't go so well. So they're usually like told that they're done and it's end of day Friday, and they don't ever work again. And there's no one to go access their password email and go in and put a message saying, "Hey, I no longer work here. Send it to this person instead." That's just not the way the industry works. It is a cutthroat industry. People switch jobs all the time. They go from one publisher to the next. So they don't usually get these long drawn out retirement goodbyes. They leave. It's over. And so I think part of authors need to know that's kind of the process. So you may not have heard from a publisher for a long time, and you may end up finding out that editor doesn't work there and hasn't worked there for a long time. And that can be a very frustrating part of the industry. I hate that part of it. I wish there was a website where people could go on and say, "Hey, I don't work here anymore." There's just not. And if that editor is surprised that they lost their job and did not keep all their contacts and emails, you have no way of knowing where they go or in touching base. And you just have to follow the industry news. That's one of the great parts about being connected with other literary agents. We can find this information out. But as an author, you just got to follow the boards, follow the chats, be on Twitter. You got to go where these editors go. And it's good to follow people, because usually they'll say, "Hey, I started a new position at such and such." And then you'll know, okay, I need to send them at their new contact. And sometimes it takes a while for them to be searching, but Publishers Marketplace is a good place. You can actually get an account as an author for free. There are industry specific parts of that where you have to be an editor, or you have to be an agent to have access to some of their services. But for the most part, there's a lot that you can do and receive there if you start following it. So I would encourage you to do so if you haven't already, because it's going to give you a different look of the industry than maybe some of you have had. And I think it's very helpful for you to do comparative searches. But I think the other thing for comparatives is go to a bookstore. So, and if the books you want to compare are not on the shelf, they may not be good comparisons at this time.
All right. So we'll finish out the comps like this. Here's a way, if you're pitching online, don't do this in a proposal, but if you're querying, you can kind of do like the X with the 2 titles to kind of blend 2 comps. Like if you write nonfiction and you say my book is The Purpose-Driven Life Meets Atomic Habits, I know exactly what kind of book you're writing, and I kind of understand the concepts that you're going to be teaching in there. And then this one is for Kyle, Downton Abbey, but with dragons.
Yeah,
So
I like it.
you're writing fiction and it's in the sort of like Victorian or English era, you could say something like that. So, but in this is
When the
quick.
fiance dies in the car crash, how does that happen with dragons?
I don't know.
Yes. Not that I've seen it or nothing. But.
So Kyle, we talked about this a little bit. Who are the bestsellers? Who are the mid-list authors? For nonfiction, if you are writing nonfiction and you're looking for comps, pay attention also to the type of social media content that those people are producing. Because if somebody has a big platform over on YouTube and their books are doing really well, it would behoove you to also then be creating content on YouTube. So you're not only comping the book, but you're saying, I know I might not be as big as this person is, but I'm following in the footsteps. And here's also where their social media is, and this is where I am going to. That does not hurt. It only will help. Amazon. Okay, so this was actually, I did a screenshot when I was doing comp research too with one of my clients. After an editor at a general market publishing house, he actually comped her book to 2 other books that we didn't have listed. He said, I really think it reminded him of Don't Let Pigeon Drive the Bus. So immediately I'm over on Amazon doing extra research on this. If you go to Amazon and type in one of your books, scroll down, because this is literally a screenshot. Amazon spends thousands, millions, hundreds, I don't know, on marketing because they want you to continue to purchase. So lean into the dollars that they're spending on this. Go down to the frequently bought together or products related to this item or customers also bought, which may or may not be helpful, that one. But if you go down to the products related, what Amazon is doing in their algorithm is they're saying, if you search for Don't Let Pigeon Drive the Bus, then these other books might be helpful to you. This whole list, there's 58 pages. If you look at the right-hand side, kind of where the arrow is, page 1 of 58 books that Amazon is saying, you might also like this. This can help you find new authors. This can help you find comp titles. This can help you find publishers that maybe weren't on your list already.
But the simple thing here is look at the reviews.
And look at the reviews.
Most likely a book with 18 reviews is not going to be a comp that's going to be respected in the trade industry. Something with 10,000 reviews will be if it's selling at a full value and it's put out by a publisher. And I don't know about what should Danny do. We can search it here.
I can't click on this, but this one has 6,800. We Don't Eat Our Classmates. Yep.
Which is most likely Ryan Higgins is actually a very popular author. So that's a comp. And so some of the ways you can do it is shortcutting it by knowing what to look for when you're doing comps, because you might have thought, All Are Happy sounds like a good comp, but it has no reviews. So, which means it most likely doesn't have a lot of sales, and it's probably not a trade published book. And so some of just knowing those things, and because you don't always know the names of different publishers, the imprints, but you can find your way to them, because a book that's selling now, if We Don't Eat Our Classmates was 6,804 reviews and it was selling at 99 cents, I would not consider that a comp, because it has to sell at retail value. For like publishers who are trade publishers do not discount their books to 99 cents. They sell it at retail value. The books must sell at retail value. And so it has to sell at retail value to potentially be a good comp.
That's a good tip. We don't really talk about that a lot, is paying attention to all the nuances of, and I wish this was, if I had Amazon up, if you can scroll down to, I've had 2 doorbells today, Kyle. And it's always 12. It's 12 exactly. And a doorbell just rang. That because this is normally our time to get on is noon Eastern. Okay.
What we find out is you have an addiction to ordering things to arrive at your house.
I do. And
every week we find this out.
More people ordering right now too, because it's Christmas. I'm gonna mute. So real quick, if you know the publisher, go to, this is the Kriegel website. But you can go to the catalogs and look at their bestsellers, their new releases. They're promoting their own books too. So if you're very clear, like I have these 5 publishers and I know they're the ones that are going to be best for me, start looking at the books that they have coming out and make sure, I tell my clients, I want at least 1 comp for every major publisher, because I want them, when I send this out, I want them to be able to identify one of their houses on their list and also see what their competition is doing. So go to the publisher websites to find comps or get the catalogs. Kyle mentioned bookstores and libraries. And then let me close out of my share. I'm going to go check the door.
Go ahead and let me share screen if you could. All right, I got it. So I'll go with Amazon and show you some of the way we do this. So I don't know what that is. All right. So as you can see here, this is Don't Let the Pigeons Drive the Bus. I'm just scrolling down by Mo Willems. Now I scroll down to some of these other books here. So like this one here. So we got 11. My Dad Loves to Toot. So it's got 1,134 at $12.49. Then you've got this book over here that's at $2.99. And it's got 146 reviews. Now, if I go, 146 reviews seems like a lot, but it's selling at $2.99 for a Kindle version. And so I need to start working my way down to see, is this a book that goes from a reputable trade published book? And you can see right here, the publisher is the author. For a comp for a trade book, to pitch this to a Penguin imprint, to pitch this to Thomas Nelson, to a HarperCollins, to a Worthy, this would not be an acceptable comparative. Whereas I've seen people pick books like this all the time because they went to Amazon, they picked some books they thought, and they didn't really do the nitty-gritty research. I mean, this has got, it's been reviewed in Kirkus, which you can pay to do. And so although this may seem like a great comp, it's not a good comp for an editor who's trying to make a decision to take before a pub board of potentially 15, 20 to 40 people at some of these houses. You need a comp that's retail value. Now, if we go back, and this is the kind of effort I do expect authors to do, and I click My Dad Loves to Toot, it's got, 1,100 reviews, and I do the same thing. That one was selling at 12 something. So it seems like, it's might be a reputable published book from a big publisher, but it's independently published. So what this author can do is use this book for platform, but it's not necessarily going to be if this author published it, this is a great platform. I've sold a lot of copies. I've got 1,100 ratings, but whereas if every book sold at $12.49, the problem is the Kindle is at a discounted rate. And when you look at the Kindle version, that's below market value, which will not be considered a reputable comp for a lot of these publishers. And so it's really understanding what is out there and how to do it. Now it looks like this person has a series of books about tooting, potentially. And so it's going back to Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. Just kind of keep going through the comps if you want to use Amazon, and keep looking for comps that might be true comparatives that you can put into your proposal. Now, Turkey Claws here, although I don't feel like that's a great comparison. I guess this is Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Sleigh. So this might be, because this is a Christmas one. If I click this one and scroll down, this is Two Lions. Now, Two Lions is a traditional publisher, and this book has 2,000 ratings, and it's selling at retail. So you've got hardcover and paperback. And so this is be a better comparison to some of the others, but you just have to keep looking through each one individually, and you're going to find out that the majority of books for you to use as comparisons are going to be comparisons that are not going to be acceptable by most industry standards. And you just have to realize that's just who they are. They are nitpicky about the comps. Here's a Disney Hyperion comp that we talked about earlier. It's got 6,900 ratings. That means it's sold a ton of copies. Disney's selling it at retail value. This would be a great comp for that book. Hardcover's $940, paperback's $13.79. And so those are some of your options there as you go through the process. This would be one that I would want to see as a comp. The only problem is it's 4 or 5 years old. So you got that 3 to 5 years. So this is just kind of on the edge of it being a good comp, but I could go to the author and find a more recent book that they've put out, potentially Penelope Rex. Let's see. This one's coming out. So this would be a good comp for a similar title to what's going on. So I don't know if this is helping. If you got questions, let us know, but I think it takes hours to get comps. and most people take minutes. They go throw it together as fast as they can. And when you look at people's pitches, we see hundreds of pitches a year, Bethany and I would say 99% of them have put very little time and effort into comps because they don't really want to do it because it's not you writing your own words. So it's like, oh, I'll just throw some of these together because the publishers require this, the agent requires it. But you can really get dinged on not having proper comps because it may show that you don't really know your industry. Because people that know the comps, they convince me that they may know a lot more about that genre than I do. And that's great because I want to see, okay, if they know more about that genre than I do, then maybe the writing stands up to the knowledge base that they've gained and they really can write this genre. So I want to take a look. So somebody who like pitches me like a query letter and tells me they know the market. This book is like this book and this book. I've got an extensive, section of comps in the last 5 years showing where my book fits in the market. Like that's enough for me to open an email every time because, okay, maybe they do know and maybe they can write it. Now there's been times that people have done that and the writing doesn't stand up, but they're usually not far off at that point because usually to get to that level of expertise in doing comps, they have been going to conferences, they've been studying, they've been learning, they've been figuring out the process, and their skills in writing have been advancing. So they're usually not far off on their writing skills, and they're well advanced in their proposals. So I don't know about you, but Bethany, is that a hook that grabs you in a query letter if somebody can tell you they know exactly what books their book's like and where it fits the market?
It's an immediate connection for me, especially if I recognize the book. So two things to that. If it's a book that I have listed on my website as one that I'm looking for the next so-and-so or books like this, immediately I know they've probably looked at my website and I know they're probably going to follow submission guidelines. And then if they have some books that I don't know, I tend to write them down because if for the reason you said, like, okay, this might be a book I'm not aware of that I need to pay attention to. So it helps my own reading list. I think one of the things is that some agents will say they don't care about comps. Like it really is split. I mean, there are some agents who say they don't care, some agents who are, it's okay. And then you have agents like me and Kyle who are like, give me the comps. I want to know them because I want to know that you understand the market. And I've got one of my clients gave me permission to share one of the secret tips that she did, which I thought was genius for picture books. And I recommend doing this with any book, but not in the same way because picture books are shorter. But she'll look at her comps and she's really got them dialed in, and she will take the time and get, pieces of printer paper, and she will write the text on paper, matching it from the picture book because she wants to be so clued in to where those page turns are happening and where the tension is building in that picture book that she will take the time to rewrite them onto paper. And you're talking maybe 700 words or less. So I don't recommend this with other genres necessarily this, but it's helped her craft better stories that way because she's taken the time to practice someone else's words that are really well in how it's going to be laid out. That it's not surprising to me that her picture books are as good as they are because she understands the nuance of that genre so well because she's learning from the comp titles that she's sharing. So her book reads in a manner similar to those comp titles, and it's lovely. And we get a lot of great feedback, and she's been to several publication boards. We're so close at like several of them. She's been to a few, and quickly too. And it's because I think she's been able to dial in on what the industry is looking for. And that's one of the things that she does. I don't know how much longer you want to spend on comps, and we can do that. I do want to make sure at some point we can
move on if nobody has any other questions. I think that's a good thing to show people some of the depth of which we go through and the effort that needs to be put into really getting the comps where they need to be.
I've got a Canva hack to share, which might make making some social media a little bit easier and like planning out content. And I did use Bard. I mean, with Kyle and I've been talking about how do you use AI ethically, like really where you need to kind of draw your boundary lines with things. I am going to come up with our like official serious writer disclaimer because I always feel like I have to say disclaimer. Like, we do not think that people should be using generative AI to learn from your craft, and
you should not ever.
We don't agree with any of that, but it is very useful sometimes on the business side of things that are not copyrightable. Kyle, your quote, I wrote it down last week. You said, if it's not copyrightable, it's probably acceptable. I think I added probably in there for legal reasons.
Yeah.
If it's not copyrightable, it's probably acceptable because you don't want to be stealing stuff.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to know, right?
It is. I'm going to share my screen. You can use ChatGPT. There's another one that I just saw come out. Competing with them begins with a P, but I can't remember the name. And then I like Bard. Anyway, let me show you real quick how to do.
Bard's from Google. If people don't know.
Yeah. All right. So I asked it. Let me scroll back up here. I asked it to create 30 captions for graphics for me. And I just put a bunch of topics that like I could use on Instagram. So it came up with several underneath the categories. And then when you're using any of these programs, you can tell it to modify the prompt you've already given it. So I just told it to credit the quotes because you definitely want to follow up. You can't trust that it's always going to tell you the truth of these things. Then it apologized to me, which I thought was funny. I apologize. I didn't credit any quotes in the original post. So here it started telling me if this was original. Number 3, though, raising princes, not rulers. He said, Bard, I guess. This was inspired by this Princess Diana quote. So I liked knowing that because you don't want to just, take that out. So that was one thing. Another thing that you can do is I said, give me 31 days of Instagram posts to share for readers. And I put a few different genres in there. So this is something you can do with whatever genre you are writing. And so this is almost like a challenge in a way. So this is basically saying, here's 31 days of content that you can create for your own social media or whatever. So just day 1, share a picture of your current read with a teasing quote that sparks curiosity. So if you're not sure what to do for social media, ask Bard to give you 31 ideas related to a topic. But I'm going to go back. Let's go back to, I think it was this one, the encouraging Instagram quotes. So all I did was copy some of these out. Actually, I'm sorry. This, what I'm showing you right now is one that I did earlier. It's not that one. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. I copied, same thing, but I copied 5 quotes that Bard gave me and just stick it into a Google Sheets in your Google Drive, or you can put it into an Excel document, and it takes every quote and puts it on a different line. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, Download, and you want to save it as a comma separated value, a CSV file, because those can be uploaded into different programs. You don't want to save it as an Excel document. You want to save it as a CSV, because then what you can do once you download that is you can go into your Canva. Kyle, have you seen this before? How to do this?
Yes. I don't use Bard. I don't really use Bard at all, but yeah, I'm familiar with Bard.
Then you can
you should be able to export and then ask Bard to make it a CSV file for you. Oh
yeah, you probably could.
Yeah, you can actually. So what you can do in other programs is you can say, I need 31 prompts and please make that like a CSV file. Yeah, and you can actually tell it how to create the file in the instructions.
I did a couple of these.
I'm guessing Bard does that. Others do it.
Probably. So what you can do is you can go in and you can like grab a template or anything. So I grabbed the Happy New Year 2024 one because I wanted the fireworks. And then you're going to go all the way down to your apps or Bulk Create, which it will put up there, but you can also find it over here in this apps thing. If you have Canva Pro, you can go to Bulk Create and then you can upload the CSV file. And then once you do that, which I already did, it'll pull it in here and then it'll ask you, you can do it'll have a data connect button right here and it'll automatically put in all of those quotes. It'll copy the background and it'll put all those quotes into that same spot. So the reason I asked Bard to do like different topics is because I didn't want to have 60 of the same background, which is one of the things I did with our Serious Writer one. And I had to go in and change the backgrounds of 60 posts for us. But if you look at the grid, very quickly, just by uploading that CSV file into Canva and then doing a bulk create, now you've got the same background with all these different quotes. So you could do a different background, grab another set of 10 quotes, and you can just do your social media really really quickly. And then there is a tutorial where a woman goes step by step on how to do this in Canva. I'm going to stick it in the chat here because I didn't want to take up a lot of time, like making everybody watch me do that. So I'm going to grab that, Kyle, real quick, the tutorial.
That's great. You're starting to make CSV this week. Yeah. I mean, you can, the thing is, every week, these processes get easier with social media through AI, where to the point of you can export the spreadsheets. There's actually AI now that will import your spreadsheet and do all what she's showing you to do. It's good to know how to do it individually like this, but she's showing you kind of a bulk input. But there's actually now AI programs that will take it straight from your program, depending on which one you're on, and they integrate with like Bard and ChatGPT, and they'll do it for you. Yeah, it feels like cheating. Yeah, because marketing is not something anybody wants to do. So like you need to market. But like marketing is done the same way. You take information, you put it out there, and you promote. And the key with marketing is the more ways that you market, the more that you get out there, the more potential you're going to have to be seen. So it's not something that you should be laboring intensively over every little post. You want to be able to create as much as you can on the widest spread that you can to be able to get as many eyeballs to see it. That's why college football and NFL football get so much money for commercials. They have 100,000 people in the stands watching a commercial. They have 22 million people watching a game. These companies are paying a lot of money to get the most eyeballs on a product. We want to do the same thing essentially as authors. We want to get the most eyeballs to see book covers and back cover copy and get them to see what you're doing, because one of those, very small percentage of those, will be your potential buyers. And so the more that you can get in front of, the more potential buyers you get in front of. And it's like 1% of 1% is usually the return you get on people seeing it. Sometimes it's 1% of 1% of 1%. So you have to get as many eyeballs to see as possible, because the return is so low on marketing that if you're only doing a little bit of marketing, you're really not going to see any return. So the more marketing you do, the more return you will see. And that's the key. And the more targeted marketing you can do, the even higher the return you can see. You might get, 5% of 1% instead, which, is 5 times what you'll normally get by sending stuff out. So these processes are important. So I think you can keep going now, Bethany. Sorry. I'm on a soapbox.
Okay. So I mentioned that I asked Bard to give me 31 days of Bookstagram inspiration with the different genres, which I showed you here. I've got a template. I put it in the chat and I'll put it in there again. This is something I created for one of my marketing clients who was doing blog posts with nonfiction type of things for her business. But this is something I'm going to let you guys have access to as well. And then if you're wanting to if you're a planner, you like spreadsheets, you can schedule out the title of what you're doing. And then this is just a simple checklist, and you can choose if an email is not going out about the topic, then just don't use the email blocks. Or if you're not doing a blog post, then forget about the blog post block. But it can kind of help you figure out, like if you want to schedule out a month in advance or 3 months in advance, or look ahead and get your quarterly marketing done. Or if you have a book that's going to be coming out and you have to do a book launch, you can kind of manipulate the template a little bit. And then it's just little check boxes. Like, did I create the graphic? Did I write the caption? Did I schedule it? Like some to-dos or brainstorming things. So I'll be sending this link. I'll be putting it in the chat, but I'll also send an email with all these links too. But the nice thing for me is sometimes I just don't know where to get started. I'm like, I don't know what to post. I don't know what's going to be valuable. I don't know what to do. And so I know Josie said it feels like cheating, but I think it gives me sort of like a starting place. Like, okay, here's some things. Well, I can take what it gives me, or I can use that as my jumping off point.
And the problem is it's limited. Like even when any program, any person is limited. I mean, they're limited to their perspective. And so the person with the best perspective is always going to be you. You're going to know your readers. You're going to know your audience better than any program or any other person that could work for you. You're irreplaceable in the process. So you kind of have to be the person that controls the process. Yeah, you can use AI to help you with marketing. But if you're trying to farm that out to somebody else who doesn't know your people, doesn't know your reader, doesn't know your market, doesn't know what your book's about, it's not going to return any results for you. And you're just going to be frustrated. Like, it doesn't work. You cannot remove you from the process. And you could try. I mean, I've tried. It doesn't work. You just end up throwing a lot of money at the wall. So I think what Bethany's trying to show you is a way that you can be part of the process and be successful and speed up the process. You can focus on things that are more important to you in the writing journey, which is the writing part, and spend as little time as possible in the marketing, but still do it extremely effectively, as if you were spending a lot more time on.
Oh, another thing too, going back to the templates that we I emailed them out, or they're on Patreon for a download. They're free for everybody. You feel free to share those. We're kind of just giving those away. But one thing on there, it has a podcast template and a publications template. That is one thing. I think that's the last thing we said we were going to make sure we got on this recording. So I want to make sure we touch on it. Google is a good friend. Looking at different podcasts are good too. And that sheet just basically walks you step by step. Like, here's the name of the podcast, who hosts it, and then who's the contact person. Because sometimes the contact person is not the host. They've got somebody else who's managing that podcast for them, and that's who you're going to be emailing out. And a lot of what you do in the querying process, when you're querying agents or if you're querying publishers on your own, you're going to use that same stuff when you're querying podcasts or when you're querying these different publications to get ready for 2024, to get some interviews out there, or to see if they're going to want, if these magazines are going to want to take your story. I think there's always things to be doing as an author, especially if you're in the waiting time where maybe you're about to go on submission, or like Josie was sharing earlier, her agent is shopping things. Well, if she's just sitting there not doing anything, which she definitely isn't. Josie is like crazy working hard at stuff, but you don't want to be just sitting there. You want to be, okay, where can I get published next? What can I be doing to build out your connections with these different people? Because that's only going to help you then either get the book deal or when the book deal comes out. And so the market guides are always great. They have the online versions, which is helpful, I think, because you could do keyword searches. So very similar to how we went into Publishers Marketplace and looked up Cuddle and Snuggle. You can look up some keywords if you're looking for agents and editors, but there's also magazines that are listed in these publications as well. And so they could be paid sometimes. They'll pay people. Or there are places that you might be able to submit a story to, especially if you're writing for children. Not every picture book is going to be taken. You have probably 50. If my clients are any indication, Kyle, I don't know about yours, but they don't stop writing them. Like, they've got like 30 that they come with, we're picking out their 3 to 5, but then they keep writing more. So like, there's this endless supply of picture books in my client list that's constantly being produced. Well, there's no way I'm going to ever sell all of those books for every client. So we're thinking, I spoke to an editor at a writer's conference recently, and I said, listen, I've got a lot of picture books. Do you ever, can I ever send some of those your way on behalf of my client? He's like, yeah. He's like, sometimes the story is very adaptable to a magazine story instead of a picture book. So be thinking kind of outside the box with some of the things you have, that maybe it's not the story that's going out right now, but there's no reason just to hide it and hold it. We all know this industry takes forever, and it's slower and slower and slower. It feels like. I feel like we say that all the time though. It's like glacier pacing, I think, is what I'm calling it now.
Right. And I like what you're saying about the number of things, like writers keep writing, but I think about like some of the most successful authors we know. Like, they don't have 30 books published. So, I mean, Harry Potter is published by J.K. Rowling. I mean, not published by her, but written by her. And how many books has J.K. Rowling published? Do you know? I mean, let me see. I'll tell you how many there's in the series. She's done
double digits.
She's done, the first, I think, 6 or 7 books. And then she's done some follow-up stuff, but she's really not done as many books as I think people probably think for a successful author. You would think, now she's one of the most famous authors of all time. Surely she's got to have sold 40, 50, 60, 100 books. And no, she's got 600 million sales, but she's got 7 Potter books, and then she's got a play. So, and she tried to do a couple books outside her name. So she maybe has a dozen books, and she could probably publish. I mean, she has enough money. She sold 600 million books. She's probably made over $600 million, not just in books, not counting the movies and all that. She could publish anything that she wanted to write, but she does. That's not how the industry works. She may have a bunch of books we don't know on the shelf. We don't know. Look at some of these other famous authors. They don't have as many books as we think that they have. And we convince ourselves, I'll just keep writing and writing and writing because I just need to get, 10 books published a year. The real thing is, in the industry, you're going to publish a book a year if you're successful. I have an author right now who's extremely successful that's only able to publish a book a year because her publishers that she's working with are locking her under 6-month competition clauses before and after the release of her titles. So she can only publish a book a year. That's what the big publishers are doing to her. So if it takes you years to get published and then you start publishing and you have success, your publishers may be going to publish a book a year. Maybe they'll do 2, but they're not going to put a lot out there because they have to have their whole team publish those books and market those books. There's a process that takes a year for each book for them to get the book ready to launch it to market and hopefully sell it. And so what they need from you is not to write. I mean, I literally had the Penguin team tell my author, we don't need you to write. We need you to market. That's your job for the next 6 months. And that's hard because my author makes a living writing. So, yeah. And she does a lot of work for hire, but they pretty much told her, you have to do all these things that we need you to do that are none of them are writing related to sell this book. And it's a complete switch. It's a different skill set. There's a different personality required for it, but that is what is required. And that's what we look at when we look at some of these famous authors and how they're publishing. And so we've got to get everyone in the mindset as I'm going to publish and then market. Publish and market. And if you're a writer in 2023, 2024, and you want to be successfully trade published, you are also going to need to be a successful marketer. And you have to get in that mindset. I'm an author and a marketer to work in the trade side of the industry, which is where you see the bookstores. That's trade.
It's good. I was thinking for fiction, it takes so long to write a novel, and so it's good to have more than one ready to go. If you depending on where you're coming in, if you're starting on your first one, as soon as you're querying that and getting it out there and sending it to agents and editors, you've got to be writing book 2. It doesn't have to be book 2 in the series. It could be a different book. But I mean, I've got a situation right now with a client. We're on submission with a project. She's a beautiful writer. The content of the book that she has ready to go is not acceptable in the marketplace right now. And so I've spoken with editors about it, and anyway, without going into the weeds on that, I can't sell it. Like, if she can take it and do something else if she wants to, but right now, like, I need, what's the next book? Like, so now she has to be working on that next book, and that's going to take time. It's why it's important to know what's going on in the market. It's like what we said at the very beginning, bringing this back full circle, paying attention to what are the deals, like signing up for the lunch that sends those deals out. You can still learn how to pitch books based on those deals. You're seeing the exact same deals, but you need to be paying attention to what's going on in the marketplace, because she is aware of what's going on in the marketplace. And we've had these conversations about, I don't know if I'm going to be able, if it'll be accepted or not. And after talking to some editors, it isn't. Because she's aware of that, she knew when I came back and said, I'm not going to be able to do it, she was like, okay, well, then let's go to the next thing. The worst thing would be if you're an author and you get that kind of news and you just like, you don't know what you're talking about. And, you get all this mad, angry because what you think is the right thing may not actually be what's happening in the marketplace. And my little story for that, and I'm going to pitch it back to you, Kyle, is there's a very famous book that's now a TV show that has a point of view from the dog. And I would have sworn up and down if I had gotten this book, I would have probably rejected it based on the fact that there's a dog POV in this contemporary book.
Right.
And yet, because I'm also trying to read wide and read a lot of these books that are coming out, it's done very well and is now a TV show. So I was wrong with that.
Right.
And I think in this industry, you have to have a little bit of an open mind as to, I don't like this subjectively, personally, but that doesn't mean that there's not a place for it in the market. And this book has proven, even if people don't like the dog POV like me, it's still going to do very, very well.
There's somebody that will, because, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's the interesting thing too, I think, is on the agenting side, for you as authors, you have to kind of separate a little bit about, this is what I like as a person and as a reader myself. This is what I can take on the business side of this industry. And sometimes those are different.
Right. And I'll give you an actual answer for my J.K. Rowling thing. She's written like 15 books in 25 years. So that's not very many. And when you think about it, some of those are like a couple of children's books that were quick for her, and most likely she got assistance on. So it goes down to even less. And when we look at like a career, but what does she do? She travels the world and she promotes her products. And I've seen her recently promoting another book that's hers, that is just a like a visual copy, like a graphic novel version of her other books. She's out promoting it right now because they've taken a product and created a derivative work of it, which they need her to go sell because she's the author. And so when you become to the point of the publisher wants to publish you, they're going to want they're going to make as much money on whatever they publish for you. So if it's successful, they're going to put out a doll. They're going to put out a calendar. They're going to put out another book. They're going to put out a workbook. They're going to put out a graphic version. They're going to do whatever they can to continue to take that one work and squeeze as much money out of it, which means they're not going to be offering a bunch of new contracts for other books because they're going to want to squeeze money out of what they've already got until they can't get any more money out of it. That's the industry. And that's smart for the industry because they don't want to invest a lot of more money in a new project, new resources, new team. So your goal as a writer is write something and be successful with it and then help sell it. And then the opportunities come to do something else that you want to do the follow-ups. That's what publishers are dying to find. These things that they can create multiple derivatives of. I don't know if you know this, Bethany. Do you know how movies make money?
I know that you have some movie deals happening, so I'm very interested to hear.
Well, just like generally, like Star Wars. How does Star Wars make its money?
I was going to say ticket sales, but I don't know if that's true.
It's not ticket sales.
It's the derivative.
Movies are lucky to break even after all the marketing, off all the costs. They make money on toys. Yeah.
The toys. Toy Story was genius, wasn't it?
Toys. I mean, the sales of Star Wars toys is astronomical. And the toy sales that these companies get, those are derivative products off of you want to get a book that you can turn into a stuffed animal. Like you just do. Like I'll give you an example. Elf on the Shelf has made people rich. So it has, because it's a simple book that has created all kinds of other derivatives. The Polar Express has made millions of dollars that are not related to the book being sold because of the rights of the show and the rights of having these trains all over the country that do Polar Express. They have to pay for being able to call the Polar Express train back to the publisher because the publisher owns the rights. So they all have to do licensing for these train rides that people go on. I mean, I've been on a Polar Express train. Like there's a licensing that goes along with every ticket back to the company. They're dying for authors to create shows and products that can create that kind of fandom. I mean, Twilight made a ton of money off of posters and cups and bowls. Like you couldn't go anywhere and not buy, Twilight products, but that's how they do it. And that's what they're looking for. And so as an author, the best way you can think of is you're going to have to be a person who pushes all that stuff if your project is successful. And I hope so. I hope my clients have to go through that. I hope I can tell them, I'm sorry, but you've become so successful that now you must go market. So all the time, so, that is the joy of it.
If somebody as famous as J.K. Rowling is still out promoting things and not just the publishers are not just doing it, I mean, how much more do those of us who are not mega bestsellers have to? We had a couple questions. I'll read them and we'll get them answered. So the question: when you're submitting to magazines, do you do that through your agent or do you go to the editor or publication directly? For me, I just want my clients to do that. I want them to just be doing that.
Yeah, I want mine to do it. If they need help with a contract, then we'll throw it in, and sometimes I'll just help them with it. It just depends on if it's worth it. If my client says, "Hey, would you look at this contract?" and it's like a $25 deal, I just do it for them. If it's like $1,000, they're working with Times, then we'll that'll be covered under our contract, and I'll help them negotiate, because usually the bigger the money, the bigger the periodical, the magazine, the more likely they're able to take your rights that you don't know about, and it hurts your publishing. And so it needs to go under the contract so I can protect your rights. And I had a newspaper try to steal a book. If my client would have signed with the newspaper is going to pay them for a story. The newspaper would have got the rights to the book underlying the story, which means my author would have lost out on, they would have completely signed over their book to the newspaper. And it was a crazy contract, but there's a British newspaper, a big one. And we actually did not do the deal. So we said, no, it wasn't enough money to make it worth it. There's no way we're going to sign that book over, and they weren't going to budge because they wanted to take the story and publish it. So you can, contracts can mess you up if you don't know what you're doing. So they're not out for your good.
Be careful.
None of these publishers are out for your best in any situation.
Be careful for contests too, that you're not signing away rights to your story. We don't, Serious Writer Contest, we don't take anything, no rights.
There's a reason we don't publish people when they win. We don't do the unpublished category and say we'll publish them, because that is bad for your career. So you're going to lose those rights, and you're going to sell them through a system that probably is not going to sell any copies. And they're going to get, I mean, I've seen people do that and like totally tank people's careers because their first book came out with the contest and it's published and it didn't sell. And it's a comp, whether you like it or not.
Right. Because you are your own, when Kyle just said that it's a comp, you are your own comps too. So like if you have books out, you don't put this in your competition section of your proposal, but the publisher will be looking at you and your past works. That's why you put it in your publication history. They do look to see how many books you have sold, and you're your own comps as well.
Yeah. Johnny mentioned that J.K. Rowling's writing under a pseudonym. Yeah, I count those books. So I didn't count her plays because plays technically not a book, but
here's one for you.
I counted those.
Do you need
you need an agent for a workbook?
For a workbook?
Yes, I've sold lots of workbooks. I actually have one that
need an agent.
you don't need one, but you can have one. Depends on what it is. I mean, I sold a workbook with Quarto, and it's done really well. It's sold tens of thousands of copies.
I'm going to search workbooks on Publishers Marketplace. I just want to see. I'm looking for deals. Ooh, okay. So here's some couples therapy workbook, mindfulness skills workbook for clinicians and clients.
Most times a workbook is going to be attached to another property that's already been successful.
Yeah.
Unless it's ours was more of like a craft niche. It wasn't really craft, but we did a visual note-taking workbook, and it was beautiful. It was well done, and it's done really well. So you can have an agent represent that, but we don't sell a ton of workbooks outside of connected to another property. So just be aware.
Yeah, a lot of these are authors that already have books out, or they've got YouTube channels that are doing really well. So they're taking the content from their YouTube channel and turning it into a workbook, mostly nonfiction. I don't think we're a surprise.
And Blue Star Publishers, Amy is saying, is a workbook publisher. So there are some. Quarto does it. There are some out there. It's a little different working with a workbook publisher because they're looking for workbooks. They're not necessarily looking for a story attached. So you gotta, if you're in the workbook area, that you need to know workbooks. You need to have researched them. You need to know who's buying what's selling, because it is totally different than the rest of the industry. But those can go in craft stores and they can get sold in places that other books don't get sold. So that's the fun part about workbooks, is I get to see the workbook we sold still, and we sold it 7 years ago. I see it all the time, because those things, they really don't, a lot of workbooks don't go out of style as fast as other books.
I looked up coloring books. There are still some, but again, they're tied to...
I saw a coloring book in Target that I saw published years ago, and it's being circulated again. So the same art. I think they put a new cover on it and called it something different, but it's literally the same art. And I know a lot of those publishers are trying to recirculate coloring books. So if you can find something that's a coloring book and connect it in a creative way, you might be able to sell it. But a lot of publishers lost their shirt on coloring books when they finally collapsed that market.
The recent deals are all they're all attached to someone who's already got something out. So it's this is the word I cannot say for the life. Ancillary. And
derivative and
derivative.
ancillary. Yeah.
Those are the products. Yeah. That's why it's good to be paying
Or
attention.
ancillary. Ancillary is what you're trying to say.
Ancillary.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ancillary and derivatives.
Does anyone need, I guess last call, because
There's also subsidiary.
Do you want to tell the difference? I'm going to put a call. If anyone wants us to look up to see any deals that are happening on a topic that you have, or if you're curious about a publisher, I will throw that into Publishers Marketplace for you off screen. Just stick it in the chat. Otherwise, Kyle, what is the difference between derivative and subsidiary and ancillary, or are they synonyms?
Your sub rights are all your different rights that go on with a book, such as like movie and foreign rights. They're all kind of considered subsidiary rights. A derivative project is one that is birthed out of the current project. It's derived from what your contract is. So if you sell it for a one book nonfiction, any project that's derived from that is a derivative project, such as, let's go get a big one, 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. He's got the 5 love languages of parents, of teenagers, of children, of aliens, of dogs. I don't know. He's got every, there's like, seems to be hundreds of different verses of that book. They're all derivatives of the original property, 5 love languages. And so a publisher can take and publish other books under their derivatives section of their contract and cut you out if you don't negotiate that you're not cut out. And because they want to
languages of he has the 5 languages of apology. Like,
I don't know that he wrote every one of those. His name's on every one because it's a derivative.
Right.
But I don't know that he wrote every one.
Just look him up. No, look him up every
year. There's no way to know. They're derivatives. So his name's going to be on the cover of every one. Yeah. I mean, Bethany, you've been a ghostwriter. You've written projects for people that are derivative. So, but you're not on the cover, right? So,
I'll never tell.
That's what ghostwriters do sometimes. Yeah. So like, those are the things that they want to take. And that's a huge way to look as a derivative is anything that is derived from the project that can make the publisher money. And so merchandise would be toys. And we do try to keep merchandise rights when we think there's a potential for merchandise. I don't try to keep them just to keep them because I don't want to argue with a publisher and try to keep things when I know we're not going to do anything with it. If we have an idea that we could do something with it, we try to keep the rights.
Fiction. Okay, so Amy said T for picture book fiction.
Oh.
Let's
T
filter.
I kind of want to look that up too.
There are books. November, there's a book coming out from Dial, and it is tea. It's called Tea is Love, and it's a meditation on the global history and tradition of tea.
Is that a picture book?
Yeah, a celebration of the ways that its warmth can connect us to our culture, our neighbors, our loved ones, and ourselves. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, everybody, honestly, get on Publisher's Lunch, start learning how to pitch based on how they're writing these deal pitches, because that is absolutely lovely. Here's one called A Bowl of Bitter Tea and a Piece of Rock Candy. It's a debut. Contemporary Chinese take on how a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Whoa. Following a girl who does everything in her power to avoid drinking her grandmother's liancha, a notoriously bitter tea from traditional Chinese medicine. Yeah, there are some. It looks like they're very connected to culture. The tea and the culture are very connected. It looks like in these pitches, which means that, again, you don't want to look at you do need to look at the books that are released, obviously. But if you're thinking about what the trend is going to be when your book is published, you want to know the books that are being acquired right now, because that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to see in 24. I mean, really 25. We're at fall 25, summer 24, spring 24. Yeah. So the tea, the gift of the broken teacup, they're all tied very much to culture. Right. Let's see. Anybody else got anyone that want French? There's
a new one. It's about a bowl in a tea room. All right. I like it.
I'm looking up French, but can you give more? Is that France? Picture book?
I think it's French. When it comes to if the book is in French, there will be some comps, but the Publishers Marketplace is mainly used by American English publishers.
When I search the word French, a lot of what's coming up is the French
international rights. Yeah.
Yeah.
French rights.
So if you've
You'll
got,
see they'll
Or-
record rights being sold, but it's kind of hit or miss with international.
I can search for Paris.
French foodie book, Compe, Pigeon in Paris. Oh, I gotcha.
There's one coming out. This sounds delightful. It's called Dakota Crumb and the Secret Bookshop, and it's a seek and find set. It's called a seek and find set in a beautiful bookstore in Paris where a little mouse follows clues to a surprise party. That's not a foodie book, but The Bees of Notre Dame. This is fun. I love Publishers Marketplace. You can learn so much.
You can spend a lot of time on Publishers Marketplace.
Chronicles Children out of Candlewick. I'm just reading out some publishers. Abrams Children's, Random House Studio, Harper Children's again, Viking Children's. There's some of the publishers that are coming up in that.
So we'll say this about Publishers Marketplace. Not every book is on Publishers Marketplace because they're difficult to work with. So they don't like everybody.
You will not find a lot of inspirational books on there.
No, you won't find much inspirational. They do not like
the
the
Christian
religious
market.
market.
Unless you put the big houses that then
if the publisher doesn't put it up there, if the agent doesn't put it up there, then the book doesn't get up, and after a while they won't put it up anymore. So things get missed because you get busy, or they just decide to not put it up there, or you submit it to me in the same day and they get mad and they don't put them up there. Been there. So I love to use Publisher Marketplace. I don't really like them very much. I've had my own issues with them. I've had friends who are having issues with them. We have a friend who's a publisher who they've just quit putting their books up because they're mad at them. So yeah, they haven't put their books up in like 9 months now. So it is what it is. Like
political. It's political.
It's political. They control the market. Yeah, it's not like the publishers getting together. It is a person who owns this that started it, and it is a helpful resource for all the publishers and agents and editors. So they kind of get to do what they want. It's their own company. And if you don't like it, you can leave. That's their opinion. So they're not going to change it. So you're not going to get every single book, every deal. So that I will say that you might be looking for things out there, but this is a good snapshot of the industry, but understanding it's not 100%. It's probably, I don't know.
Oh,
if you take out the 20% of the religious market that is the market, because a huge part of the market, it's probably a 70% snapshot of the market.
Speaking of, we just had Janaire Trump come on here. She was a former acquisitions editor with Kriegel. So the replay, I think I still need to upload the replay, but that will go live as our podcast in 24. So you guys are getting, like, some of you were able to come on with her and be with her live as one of your club perks, which is, we love that. But one of the things that she said on that call, even though she's not acquiring for them anymore, she did give some insight into how the acquisitions team at publishing houses work. And so if you're kind of disappointed, like, oh, well, we're not going to see a lot of the Christian market here on Publishers Marketplace, what do we do? Well, go to their websites and things. But she did say that the Christian inspirational market is about 2 to 4 to 5 years behind the general market. So if you're paying attention to what's going to be coming out in the general market, then you know that 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the inspirational market's going to catch up to that trend. So that does actually give you a lot of insight into what will be coming. So if you're having trouble getting it pitched now,
like, for example, dinosaurs, they were big like 4 years ago. And then a year ago, 2 years ago, dinosaurs were big in the religious market, but they were big in the general market 4 years ago. So there is that. If you pay attention, you may be able to understand what's coming with the trends.
And it gives you a little bit more time on the inspirational market because of that.
Right.
Kyle, we have 10 minutes left. I think I shared everything that I had.
Well, that's great. I think these have been some helpful things, and we appreciate the time that Josie took to tell us her story, because that's awesome to be part of her journey as serious writer, and be celebrating her successful career here, as she's got 2 books and hopefully we'll have lots more.
Yeah, I hope so.
One day maybe we'll be able to say she's our J.K. Rowling.
Any other questions? Mom, are you still there? Calling Johnny Alexander. I thought it might be fun to end with something we were kind of messing around with. We were kind of messing around with AI.
Johnny and the Snuggery there.
Yeah, looking
Right.
for
Oh, I thought you were talking about AI. I thought you were talking about like how she referenced that she lives in the snuggery in your basement.
it's so dark in there right now, but it's
Yeah.
so warm too. She's got a little heater.
She was
down there.
napping, and then you called her. You called her up.
Mom. So one of the things we were playing around with was like, could AI give you ideas like for books? Like, because here's the thing:
Oh yeah.
a pitch, a plot, or a pitch. Okay, Kyle, we've said this at conferences before,
You want to
but
do this live?
yeah, we can. So I want to just make sure. I feel like I have to throw out a disclaimer again.
Oh,
We can have one pitch, and people could have 100 different variations of it. So if I said to you, Mom and Kyle, that here's my pitch idea: there's an orphaned boy living with his aunts and uncles, and something magical happens, and someone comes to rescue him, and now he has these powers that he has to learn how to cultivate, and he has friends that he meets along the way. What book am I talking about?
Either Harry Potter or Star Wars.
And they're completely different books. So just on that one basic little premise, you've got these two and probably more books. So that's where you can use, I think, AI to kind of give you like an idea pitch, because Harry Potter and Star Wars are two completely different categories. They're two completely different genres, but they all come under this one teeny little basic idea. So for anyone who's like, well, you're just going to copyright that pitch could be for lots of books. I'm sure maybe other people thought of other books that sounded like. So we were kind of seeing along those same lines, like what could AI do in terms of giving ideas for books to write. So Mom, you want to share about how fun that was?
It was fun, but it's been a bit. So now I'm trying to remember, because I wrote a book called The Mischief Thief, and it was supposed to be the first book in a series. And what happened was then I got a lot of contracts. It was indie published. It's my only indie published novel. So I got contracts to write other stuff. And so there are no more books in that series, but I want to write more books in the series. The problem is the main character is a con artist with a conscience, and the other protagonist is a minister who no longer has a ministry. And there's a Les Mis thing there where he shows her grace, and then they work together to save a racehorse. So The Mischief Thief. So it's like, it's really hard to come up with cons. I love the show Leverage. So this book is kind of a Les Mis meets Leverage book.
Oh,
so if you're familiar with the show, that makes sense to you, right? So we were putting in like the con artist, and, she has a conscience. So she's not a really bad con artist, but she wants to help other people. And it was coming up with some really interesting things. And then I had never used it before. So Bethany's like coaching me through this. And it was saying, just different, and I don't remember what any of them are. I think we probably do have them in Bard, that they may keep them, but it was coming up with different things. And then I could like fine tune it and say, well, yeah, but she's, she has a cousin who's in jail, and she wants to figure out how to get him out. And she has no other family except a grandfather who was very influential in teaching her how to be a good con artist. And she's sort of separating herself from that. But there is the challenge of writing an inspirational book where you are allowing people to lie and cheat other people. So your main character to be the one doing that, it's a bit of a challenge. So
we can do this live. Kyle, do you want to pull something up? But Mom, those comps, Les Miserables meets Leverage, I would buy that book based on just that.
Yeah. I mean, that's
on your
kind of
website.
fun. So it's yeah, I'm not sure if it's in there with the description on that book or not. But it's any of that where it's like, if I'm really showing my age here, like Alias Smith and Jones, that old Western, where they were two thieves and bank robbers and stuff, and then they're trying to go good, so they'll eventually be pardoned. So it's like sometimes the best good guys are the bad guys, right? Because they know what to do. So it's that kind of a story, and it's a lot of fun, and I love it. And I do want to finish the series. I want there to be 4 books in the series that sort of follows the Les Mis journey of Jean Valjean. But that's a challenge too. So I'm really taking these very challenging things and then trying to make an inspirational novel out of it. So pray for me.
That's exciting.
What would happen, Kyle, if you put in, do you have Bard or Chat?
I already used ChatGPT.
Okay.
Oh, let's
Now,
hear
here's
it.
a disclaimer. Here's a disclaimer. in the contracts that I've been signing with people with big publishers, if you use AI in any aspect, you are supposed to legally, you're saying that you will let them know. So if you use Chat GPT, even for a book idea,
Oh,
you're
really?
supposed to tell them how you used AI. So if you say, AI helped me generate this idea, you have to tell them that. Now, I know a lot of people are going to lie in this process. They're not going to tell them that I came up with the idea. But the issue is that's what's being told in the contracts. And I have a feeling if you reveal in your contracts what you use, it could be the reason you get your contract canned, potentially, depending on how you use AI.
Good to
They
know.
they have a very specific way that you're allowed to use it, and only that. You can't use it for any writing. You can use it for research. And if you do it, you use any words out of it, but I think you're going to get put under a microscope. But so this is more for fun. This is entertainment right now.
Right.
But I did put in Chat GPT, give me 5 ideas for a Star Wars with turtles. I don't know. I have no idea why I said.
Okay, that's fun though. You want to
There's
share
5 ideas. They got some great titles. Of the 5 ideas, I don't know. I'll read you the 5 titles, and then I'm not gonna read all the ideas. But the one I like the most is the Shell Wars. So, but there's Turtle Jedi, there's Interstellar Turtle Republic, there's the Rise of the Shell Order, and then there's Turtle Star Pilots. So very different concepts from these 5. But I like the Shell Wars. It's a galaxy far away. Turtle-like creatures pilot custom-built shells equipped with advanced technology. These heroes journey across planets to unite their divided species against a rising threat, a dark turtle empire seeking to control their galaxy. The story could focus on the development of young turtles as they learn the ways of an ancient and mystical art that helps them control the force of nature. And then I would say this would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meets Star Wars. I mean, so that's how you would. That's kind of the pitch. So, not saying you should do this. I want to pick something random and weird. But like it is a good pitch, right? It's a good breakdown. If you took something like that, said, okay, I don't like that, but I'm going to use that concept of putting these things together and utilizing that. I mean, you could have it write the 3, or I mean, I've done this before just to see it, like break down the 3-act structure of Star Wars. It can break down the 3-act structure, every piece of it. And then you could take that 3-act structure and say, okay, here's the pieces that made Star Wars. I can just create my own 3-act structure based on those pieces. It's a great research tool because all it's doing is scouring the web of people who have broken down all these things and understand 3-act structure and have taught on them. And it's taking any project that you want and creating a 3-act structure. Let's do Johnny Alexander's. All right. Johnny, what's the title of your book?
The Mischief Thief.
This is your new one, what, right?
No,
It's the one I wrote. Yeah. What do you mean by new
what's
one?
your first? What's the World War II one?
That's not published yet?
No, your first one.
Where Treasure Hides.
Yeah.
Give me a breakdown of Johnny. I'm gonna try to get a breakdown of yours.
I put in the while he's doing that, I put in the
What's the name of the book?
Where
Treasure Hides.
For the Leverage versus Les Miserables, and it said grifters, hackers, and rebels rise from the city's underbelly to topple a corporate leviathan in a dazzling Robin Hood heist for the digital age.
That was great, doesn't it?
That was the Bard pitch for funsies. Robin, question, Kyle. If I use Chat GPT, this is from Robin Curry. If I use Chat GPT for writing pitches or blurbs, do I have to disclose that? Publishers use that. So what is your thoughts on
For
that?
marketing? No.
And
Pitches or blurbs? No,
proposal
not
either.
in your pitch. I mean, if again, we'll go back to the non-copyrightable, right? If it's not copyrightable,
Probably
then
acceptable.
it's probably acceptable
Probably.
because
Yeah.
there's no copyright. So anything you write that's copyrightable, it should be 100% man-made. I think that's my default. Marketing doesn't matter because people steal marketing all the time. Just Do It, Nike. There's so many different variations of something like that out there. People steal and borrow and beg with marketing. It's not copyrightable. If it's trademarked, it's a whole different thing. But if it's not copyrightable, not trademarked, then it's probably acceptable.
Probably acceptable.
Yeah. All right, Johnny, let me read this to you. All right, ready?
Okay.
This is a breakdown for your book. Johnny's probably going to die. Act 1, setup, the introduction and characters and setting. The story introduces artist Alison Schuler and British officer
Skylar.
Ian Devlin. Well, it says Schuler. It says
Skylar.
it says
This is
oh
a fight.
Skylar. Okay.
This is an ongoing fight with
In the
them.
backdrop
is.
of World War II. Allison, part of a family that owns an art gallery in Rotterdam, encounters Ian in the gallery. There being sparks instant connection. 2, inciting incident. This is still Act 1. The inciting incident is likely the meeting of Allison and Ian, which sets off a chain of events. Their lives are intertwined with the looming war and the threat it possesses to art and humanity. Establishing the stakes and goal. Allison's family is involved in protecting priceless works of art from the Nazis. Stakes are high with the advancement of Nazi forces across Europe, which poses a direct threat to the cultural heritage and the characters' lives. That's Act 1, the setup.
Yeah.
How accurate is that?
We're very, very accurate.
Is that scary?
Yes.
Johnny secretly
that?
is like, she's in the snuggery now, but she's not happy.
How's it reading your book?
All right, so Act 2, I'm not going to read it all. Act 2 climax. And it has the rising action and complications. It has the development of relationships and conflict in Act 2, and then it has the climax. I'll skip to the climax. It says the climax in a war-based narrative often involves a critical moment of conflict or decision. And where the treasure hides, this could be a pivotal moment that tests Allison and Ian's resolve, perhaps a confrontation with Nazi forces or a crucial decision that impacts their mission and relationship.
Oh, so it actually didn't go into detail what that was,
It didn't go into detail on that one.
which is probably good.
Yeah.
Now, the rising action
Spoiler.
seems to be, let's see. It seems like as it gets deeper in the book, maybe it doesn't have it. Let's see what the final.
It might not have access to the entire book,
Yeah.
whatever it's crawling, which is good for you, Mom. That it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like as it gets further into the book, it has less, but it's
Less.
pretty accurate in the first half of the book.
That first one was very accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It's
exactly
like
what
scary.
it was.
Now,
Mhm.
if your book was, trade book from like a big penguin or a house or something, most likely they would have probably the whole book.
Yeah.
Which means because you can spit out like J.K. Rowling's book and it'll spit you out a very detailed.
Is this Thomas Nelson or
Tyndale.
Tyndale?
That's Tyndale, which I don't think Tyndale lets their books go into any system. Some of the publishers have, some of them didn't know that they had because they had signed off rights to different things and their books got in. So, but it looks like your book is not in the generative AI, at least
That's good to know.
fully. So that's good. But the problem is you just don't know these days, right?
Right.
But this is where the schools are having a hard time, right? Because like for the most part, somebody could have got, go do an assignment on the 3x structure of this book. I mean, you could have just generated it. So,
Wow.
but like, so that's the hard part. I think education's really struggling right now with AI. And so but even though there's generic part of the end of this book, that's a good 3-act structure. It has Act 1, the setup. Yeah, it has introduction of characters and setting, the inciting incident, and establishing stakes and goals. If you just took those 3 as an author and said, okay, I need to do these 3 things in Act 1. And then Act 2, you need rising action and complications. You need development of relationships and conflicts, and you need a climax in Act 2, which has to be a very long Act 2. But if you got that, you'd have a good outline for Act 2, at least starting. And then Act 3, the resolution, the falling action, the denouement, and the final message or theme of the book.
And here's the thing, though, anyone could take they could take that first part, and they've got, of course, the characters' names and that she's with this family and that they're working to hide the art. But their story, if they wrote a 100,000-word novel like I did, it's not going to be anything like my novel. I mean,
it'd be completely different because they're writing it originally,
story. Right?
The 100% original. They're going to have to go to their own mind.
Exactly.
Now, that's the difference. That's why. I mean, 3-act structure is so similar between most books. Like a 3-act structure is a particular writing style for a reason. It works for people. It's worked for people thousand years, right? So you could take it and you could write that same story in a totally different way because it's a different person. And I think that's where the research aspect comes in as helpful. But the writing needs to be original. So
that was interesting though. That was kind of fun. Bethany and I wrote, I hope she doesn't mind me telling this. We needed to write workshop descriptions, and I was like struggling with this workshop description over a workshop that I have given before, and I still just wasn't able to get it.
How
But
long did you spend on this workshop description? I'm
oh
watching
my
Kyle.
gosh, I needed a paragraph and I spent like 2 or 3 hours on it. And it
Kyle,
was
she spent 3 hours on a workshop description.
and then
I'm not
Becky
kidding.
said, try Bard.
I was like, just
Oh my.
hard. Mom,
Oh my.
3 hours. I looked over her. I said, what are you doing? I'm still
Yeah.
working on the workshop description. I was like, Mom.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, they wrote up something and it was very much more academic than what I was wanting. And I only wanted a few words too. So I said, be less academic. And then it did. But then I took it and took mine. And I was done like in what, 15 minutes maybe?
Yeah. I was
you
at a
know,
wedding. I was at a wedding Saturday, Johnny, and
Yeah.
I wrote a letter of recommendation. It's the best one I've ever written. While I was sitting at the table with the person that asked me, "Would you write me a letter of recommendation?" I just went to Chat GPT and I put in the
What can
things
I
that I know about the person. I know who the
Oh.
person is, so I
Yeah.
put in these are the details of what I know about the person. Could you write me a letter of recommendation for this job? And it was perfect. And honestly, it's one of the things I hate the most because I get asked for letters of recommendation all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm never at a place where I can do it easily or quickly for the person in the time frame that they want. And it's
Right.
always like, I'm sorry, I can't get to that. Well, now I can get to it and do it for people, and it's good. I made sure that it was good. Like it was sounded like things I would say. I mean, I wanted to be accurate. But I even put in my phone number, my email, my address, all of that. I typed in the prompt and said, this is because it'll spit that out in the letter format. And so some of that stuff, there's a helpful aspect to it.
There
There's
really
also
is.
the danger of it could destroy your career if you are not wise about how you use it. So
But
it's
you
like
have to
it's like explosives.
look at it.
Like they
Yeah,
could go
you-
off at any time. So be very careful with them.
You
They're
just have to really look at it because I felt like I really had a pretty good start. I just needed some, I don't know, just a little bit of tweaking of my own. I probably should have put what I had written in there and it would have come out. And then we did Bethany's and they did bullet points and we sort of had to like,
I merged
Really?
out the ones I don't use. I put in my
Yeah.
ones I do use. It was helpful. Another way that I use it
it's
is
very quick. Hers was very quick.
yeah, mine was fast. But what I have found it to be helpful too is if I'm trying to hit the right tone or the right note in an email, I will type out my draft of the email and I will say, does this fit? Does this sound da 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 for this situation? And sometimes it'll say, yes, this is perfect, but it'll tell you why. It'll say you hit this voice here, here, and here. Or I'll say, can you make this sound a little more friendly? Or can you make this sound a little bit more informative? And it'll say, this is what I added into it. And it's not my voice. So I don't necessarily always just take exactly that, but it does give me a chance to go back and think through what I'm writing in that email to get to the right tone of what I'm trying to convey. I have found that to be very, very helpful to kind of see my blind spots and when I'm writing emails for the
Right.
suggestions that has given me on a business side. So I found it like we said at the beginning, just for anyone who's come in, we do not think you should be using this to write your books.
no,
No.
do not do that.
We do not think this is good for that.
If you do, you will throw your career away. Once you're labeled an AI user, you will always be used. And when you submit your writing, you'll always be labeled that.
I think I found a little bit of safety when the publishers were in that workshop, Kyle, where they were talking about how they were using it on the business side, like for that cover copy or some of the queries or some of the things that they were using the content, not feeding a client's book into the machine. I would be very clear about that. They do not do that, but they were using it to help kind of craft some of the blurbs from the market.
Well, that's the problem, right? If you cut and paste a piece of your book into the prompt, you just trained the prompt on your book. They now have your writing and your words and your style. And if you give them enough of it, you just gave them your book, gave them everything, and they're going to spit out potentially your book for someone else. So that's why you don't want to put your book in anything.
If you have a back cover copy that's on Amazon, like for example, which is out there you could take your book's back cover copy and ask it to update it or revise it. That's already out there. That was one thing.
Yeah, if it's already published, it's out there, and you can get it on the internet. Then it's already there. They've already got it. So
don't do other people's, do yours. Like,
yeah.
just be so careful what we say. People get really angry for good reason. There's good reason that people get mad about how it's.
I get upset about what AI is doing in the industry. It's a really hard time for the industry right now as they're trying to figure it out. As someone who loves publishing and loves books and loves writing, I'm frustrated by AI, but also it's not going to go away. It's not. It's
Yeah.
how do you harness it? And when it comes to authors, the best way to harness marketing, make your life
Yeah.
easier.
I agree.
I think we've went over.
Yeah, gone over time.
So that happens.
Surprise.
Well, for those of you who stayed with us, thanks for coming. It's been a fun 2 hours plus. And if you didn't catch it all, this will be posted live later. You can watch the replay. And Merry Christmas. We'll see you after Christmas.
Yeah, 2025.
Right.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.